Our next guest is someone I have talked to and interviewed before for Forbes magazine, Agrawal, and I'll happily give you a short introduction to herself, which is going to be challenging because she's doing a lot. Miki, you are an entrepreneur, a founder, a DJ, a mom, and you've actually founded several companies, among them famously probably Tushy and Thinx. Tushy sells bidets that attach to toilet seats, and I remember them becoming really popular in the pandemic when there was a toilet paper shortage. And Thinx makes period underwear that replaces tampons and pads. Your main focus now is on Tushy. You left Thinx, but first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Oh my gosh, I love seeing you. It's great to see you again.
Great. Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm in New York City at the moment. Where are you?
I'm in Austin, Texas. My home is finally finished after many, many months of lots of hard work. So it feels good to be home.
Great. Now, I gave a bunch of things that you do, an introduction, but I'm sure that you see different things than people from the outside might see. So how would you describe yourself? How would you introduce yourself?
I would say the way people describe me or my close friends is like a creative, first and foremost, a creative entrepreneur and inventor. I'm just someone who kind of sees problems in the world and who wants to make them better for people and the planet.
What drives you? Maybe you can tell me a few themes that kind of make you do what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately everything starts with a personal problem, right? It's like, oh, like I had period accidents, I'm bleeding everywhere. Or every time I go to the bathroom, it's the messiest experience with dry paper wiping your butt, which just moves poop around. That makes no sense. And I'm half Japanese, half Indian. And so I grew up with bidets. And so I know the value of that. And so, there's such a clear, obvious opportunity to make the world better, make the planet less kind of strained while supporting the elevation of human experience. And so that's what I really care about. And that's what drives me. And how do we do it from the lens of creativity? Like, how do we tell a story in a way that gets people excited to share with their friends? How do you create something that's super artful and beautiful to look at, even when we're talking about something that's taboo, like periods and poop? How do you make a conversation accessible and relatable where people feel like you're talking to your best friend about something normal when you're talking about taboo things like periods and poop? And so I think those are the things that really drive me to how do you harness creativity to have these conversations? How do you harness invention to have these conversations and make them better for people on the planet?
I think that one of the themes that I've been observing from the outside kind of is that there's a big aspect as well in empowering women. It's a lot about women as well. When you look at the business world, at corporations, startups, you have it. Are we doing a good enough job in empowering and lifting up women, or is there more work to do? And I'm talking about other women, like empowering each other in solidarity, and I'm talking about men.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Harvard Business Review, 2% of women are getting invested in today. And that number went down from the last couple of years. And so the old boys club is really trying to stake their claim and maintain while women are rising up in business, in the business world. There is so much work to be done for sure in entrepreneurship, in the realm of business, to incorporate women into the conversation. I think the world will be so much more balanced if women are in the conversation, and not just women and men, but all the different races, all the different genders, and all the different ages. I think it's just the more diverse we could be, the more perspectives you receive, it's actually the better for business. And so I think the way I've been contributing is that, as I've been making money and selling, my companies and things like that, or selling my last one specifically, I've invested in over 18 companies, and most of them, 100% of them are either founded or co-founded by a woman. And so there's always one women-owned entrepreneur in the conversation. And I think that's my way of contributing to the conversation. And I think for me, you know, as someone who sold a big business, trying to raise money for my next company was still a challenge. You know, I received feedback like, oh, you got lucky. Oh, you know, that's just like a, you know, what lottery winner. And it's like, no. And it was still a grind to try and raise capital again. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to play the game. And, you know, in the system that we're living in, the patriarchal conditioned system that we live in, I will put a amazing sort of believes in equality, but a white male as my CEO. And with him in the room, I raised money like that, you know, in the beginning. And so it was just a really big, clear showing that, wow, like if I'm in the room by myself, it's like I have to go and like share my accolades all the time. But if I'm sitting in the room with my white male executive, it changes the conversation dynamic. And that was a clear A/B test. And it was clear. Am I complaining about it? No. Am I sort of like shouting from the rooftops about how bad the system is? No, I don't think women should actually do that because this is just a system that we've entered. Unfortunately, the patriarchy came into the times since the Neolithic times. This is like, we're dating back too many years to even think of. And so the patriarchy came in the Neolithic times. And so it's not like men are trying to be an old boys club. It's just the way it's been. So how can women change the conversation? It's not by shouting. It's not by marching. I mean, some can do that. I don't think that's the best use of time. For me, it's for women to found companies, play ball, just like I have in the same, like I brought in a white male CEO, raised the capital. And now guess what? I still own most of the company. And so my last company as well, I was able to sell my company and invest in 18 women. Right. And so that's how I think about shifting consciousness, shifting the world, not by shouting, not by yelling, not by being on a pulpit and being feminist. You know, even the future is female. I talk about this in my book, Disrupt Her. And in my book, Disrupt Her, I talk about the concept of future is female. That concept is doing exactly that which we're fighting against, gender oppression. The future is not female. The future is everyone. And so it's not, we're oppressing men. I have a son, like I'm not interested in doing that. So for me, the world is like the future is everyone. The future is equal. The future is equanimity. And so I think there's a way for women to recalibrate our anger, and we have a right to be angry. There has been oppression. There has been an inequality. It's been very frustrating and reason to be angry, but we can be smarter in how we play the game that we're living in today. And we have learned that marches help marginally, but the best way to do it is through money and through dollars earned as a woman. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that would have been my next question. Where would you like to see society in a few years or in a decade? But I feel like you already answered that by saying diversity. It's gonna be everyone together. But maybe if you have to add, and if you want to add anything to that, then feel free. I would love to hear that.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I've A/B tested as well, like having all young women, you know, who are all like, you know, of one race, you know, on my team, my last company, to with Tushy, gender diverse. It's race diverse, and it's age diverse, and we're thriving, you know, in a way that's like the actual mix, like the culture of the company is doing so well. And so I think if it's too much of one thing, like anything else, it's just like it's not balanced. If actually you have, you know, like we don't have a big team, we're still, you know, under 30 people, but we've collectively done over, you know, 9 figures in business. We've done well over 100 million in revenue as a company, a tiny but mighty company. And I believe it's because we always have diverse perspectives. You always have different ways of looking at the same problem together from different angles. And for us, it's not like who's ranked higher. It's may the best idea win. May the best collaborative idea win. And I think that's what's been really exciting for us is like, you know, we just had a meeting this past week for Tushy, where it was our marketing, our creative, and our executive team in the room, and our ops team kind of talking about the brand, and it got heated. And at the end, we kind of like all laughed and applauded the fact that we're all so passionate about the brand. We care so much about the way it looks and the colors and the voice and all the things, even the ops team and the marketing, everyone wants a say. And so for us, like even as a creative team, we sit back and we're like, oh, it's interesting. Like, why do they think that? Where's that coming from? And then we incorporate a lot of the feedback. And it turned out that when everyone's viewpoints were heard, we came up with the best possible end product. That to me is also part of this diversity conversation. It's like we're selling a product that supports people here, but who else can we support at the same time? You know, and so for us, it's such a multi-layered way of thinking about business, and it's working. You know, if you think about, I sit on the board of Conscious Capitalism, and the last thing I'll say, right, is in the realm of conscious capitalism, conscious businesses, which is based around the stakeholder model versus the shareholder model, which only the shareholders win. The stakeholder model it's a win-win-win-win-win mentality. It's not just the shareholders, but it's the employees, it's the customers, it's the suppliers and the planet. And so if everybody wins, those companies, conscious businesses, oftentimes outperform just shareholder-focused businesses by up to 14 times financially. And so that alone should be enough for people to say, maybe I should build a diverse, conscious business as my next business because it's actually better for business.
Right. I think, and you mentioned that it's better for business actually, and you mentioned where does the money go actually in startups. I think what a lot of people and entrepreneurs maybe would want to know is, how do you pitch ideas to investors, to people who are going to decide to give you money or not, especially when it's things like taboos, like, talking about bidets or periods. So I'm assuming there's just like kind of like a higher bar, or it's a bit more difficult to talk about that kind of stuff. And
it is. It really is difficult to talk about those things. And so I've learned in my experience of pitching and relating, right? So like ultimately we have to meet people where they are. Like I've tried to first explain to investors, which are mostly men, the pain point of having a period as a woman. I even had an investor wear a pad, like go into the bathroom, put a pad on and walk around. And that was fine for like one investor, but most people is not interested in doing that. They're very like straight and narrow. So that didn't work for everybody. But I tried to first put people in the shoes of the customer, but oftentimes the investor and the customer are not the same, right? And so then the way I learned, again, this is practice, and practice makes perfect. And we always, like a lot of times entrepreneurs pitch 10 times. They're like, oh, I got a bunch of no's and I'm done. You have to pitch 100 times, 150 times, 200 times. And by the time you really understand the nuances of when someone glosses over, when they're not interested, or when they're leaning in with their eyes sort of raised, eyebrows raised, being like, didn't even think about that. That's when you start to really understand the cues of people, and so like the more you do something and the more you practice, the more you get it. So for me, what I learned with raising money for my companies is really showing the major problem and the big opportunity. And I think a lot of times, and like the disruptive opportunity and the blue ocean, opportunity. And I think using kind of buzzwords that investors understand. It's like, the feminine hygiene category hasn't changed in, over 50 years, since many, many years. The bidet or like the toilet category hasn't changed since the late 1800s. The way we wipe ourselves has not changed since the late 1800s. Right now we're talking over Zoom, like we do our transactions on our phones. We like do everything over this like non-existent, raise. And yet the way we go to the bathroom hasn't changed since the late 1800s. Like this has to change. And why hasn't changed? Because it's taboo. People aren't talking about it. So what does that mean? There's a huge opportunity to disrupt this category that sorely needs disrupting, that supports people's, wallets. That's much cleaner, that supports people's ailments. There's 100 million people with chronic UTIs, hemorrhoids, fissures, itching, bacterial vaginosis, yeast infections, all the issues with mobility, GI, there's like thyroid, all those things which cause loose stool. So many people have issues down there. And yet we haven't changed the way we go to the bathroom, it's causing future and chronic issues, we can change that. People who just want to be clean, people who are, people are sustainably conscious. Like there's so many ways to think about the marketing of these products. And so now we're positioning it from the lens of, oh, here's how you're going to make your money back. And here's how you're going to exponentially build your, build your investment in this business. And so it's now not looking at necessarily from my lens and my pain point, but just seeing like how they would win. And, people ultimately want, like anything else, it's like, how do I position something that is presented to the person that it makes sense to them the most? Ultimately.
And I mean, what's a great kind of approach, I think, is to see what are markets or products that are taboo. And so we haven't invented anything in these areas because we just were too scared or embarrassed to talk about it. So, and you're kind of like using this as markets. You're like, we haven't changed anything there. Like, we have great software and applications and smartphones and electric cars, but like the things that we haven't been inventing. Same with periods, by the way. We haven't invented anything there. So these are the markets I'm going to go into. And I find that very interesting, maybe also for other entrepreneurs, just to think in a way that where are we not inventing things?
Right. And that's why I think the taboo spaces and the disruptive spaces that are the taboo spaces are such ripe places for innovation, for building huge companies, because people are not talking about it. And because they're not talking about it, they're not inventing anything new in it. And so that creates a huge opportunity to disrupt, right? I have a lot of these thoughts are in my book, Disrupt Her, and I highly recommend watching, check it out, because it helps you think through how to think disruptively before you even go forth in a disruptive business.
And maybe to that kind of like, if you have a message that you could give young entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, but everyone really who is setting out to do something new and trying to get money from investors and in the end money from the consumer, or inventing something new and having people buy it. Do you have any message or help or inspiration that you could share?
Yeah, I think aside from the investor conversation where you're trying to put the problem and to have them understand the problem, I think when it comes to building a brand, that has to be extremely authentic. It all has to be authentic, but authentic to us. And I think like, to me, the founder, to my team, for us, like, how do we want to share the pain point authentically? How do we do it in a way that feels like it comes from this part of our body versus like this part of our body? Like, I wonder what my customer wants me to say, which ends up being inauthentic, versus like, what do I so deep inside of myself want to share about this problem, and what gets me excited about this problem, solving this problem? Like for me, I know that Tushy's changed my life. I use it multiple times a day. It has truly changed my life, and it's changed the lives of over 1 million people, right? All the people on my team, it's changed their lives. So the way we speak about it is just authentic. It's like, like, I can't wait to talk about it because it's changed my life. And so I think that energy is that authentic, truthful energy is what lands for people. And I think oftentimes entrepreneurs are like, I wonder what customers want me to say. I'm just going to say it in a really clean, really well, nicely put way. And it ends up sounding inauthentic and untrue and feels just contrived, versus like we don't like take ourselves seriously. We don't like we're not trying to be too cool. We're just excited. And I think that energy breeds more excitement. And so I think what I can offer is, don't be too cool for school about your idea. Like, the more excited and the more like alive you are authentically, because it's true, the more you'll attract people to invest and to support and to consume and to try it, because you're just like, you have to try this. It's changed my life. Like, that energy, authentic and true and real. And so that's, you can't make it up. And to find out in yourself deep inside, like, what is true for you about this business that you're starting, and just start there when it comes to building the brand.
Miki, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing everything so openly. Thank you.
Yes, of course.